Hey everyone, it's great to be here. Oh, thank you to those three people. I know it's cold down here. That must shut the mind and mouth up, does it? There's some business people, when you speak at breakfast, I think would prefer to be back in bed. They don't seem to be awake at all. But yesterday, part of your group was awake. And it was okay. We got them going. And it was interesting. So it's great to be here. Sue and I... she loves the cold. I hate it. We went to India again in March for 2 weeks. Did 7 cities in 2 weeks, speaking to pastors, leaders, and then business people at night time. And we finished, and someone said, "How did Sue like it?" I said, "She loved it. She wants to go back for 6 months." And she said, on the way back, "I don't want to go back there ever. I've now done this." So I said, okay, so I have to do it on my own now when I go there. Because I never would have thought when I was young and started work at 14 that God was going to do something when you turn 71, that you're speaking in countries around the world. And let me tell you, we're not on my travel list. Cambodia, Myanmar, the old Burma, Nepal, and India 3 times now. And I sit in the train travelling and I say to Sue, you look out there and say, where do you start in this country for it to be fixed? It's just enormous. But, there are ministries started there that are doing a phenomenal job and growing, having a huge impact right across the country, despite the opposition from the government to Christians. Even to the point in North India where the Muslims say to the Christians, we've got to stick together because the radical Hindus are out to kill both of us. Openly, by the way. It's talked about and they turn up at meetings and all types of stuff. But they're there and they're faithful. And I spoke to pastors who are going out for the first time to villages and they all expect they're going to be persecuted or killed. That's their expectation when they go out, but they got the calling and they wouldn't do anything else in their life. And that's why I love your theme that you've got for this month, One Family. Because and the power of, I think it says something else on the screen there, is it? The power of one. Because we think we can't do anything. And the church and us as Christians, as individuals in this country, have got to start standing up. We've allowed other people to take the agenda. And it's about time we stand up. So I've titled today, The Power... I didn't title it Power, I pinched that a moment ago. But you can make a difference. One person can make a difference. But before we get into it, we've pretty well run out of resources yesterday. We sell these. They all go into our not-for-profit that help what we're doing, speaking in some of these countries. But I've got a few copies of Building Your Business, Your People, Your Life. Very practical with lots of stories. So there's a few of those left. And there are a few PDF versions of each of the 2 books. I don't know a lot about these, but you just flick this out, you stick it in a laptop or computer or whatever, and you can read it, like Kindle or something. I like computers, on, off, delete, are very good buttons for me. My grandkids have all moved further away, so my technical team, I have to get on FaceTime to actually get anything fixed now. And the other one we've got just a few left is this USB that has 5 audio talks, 2 video talks and 4 mini workbooks to help people in marketing, the workbooks, marketing, building plans, leadership and a whole lot of stuff. So have a look at that stuff out there. And if we run out of anything and you want to order it, we can post it to you during the week. So Sue will look after that and I'll try and get there as well. The other thing, we've been posting lots of short videos under Peter Irvine, Kingdom Momentum. And it's all about momentum in the kingdom, getting the kingdom to grow. So grab one of these sheets of paper if you can't remember that. Peter Irvine Kingdom. They're free, they're short videos, and I've done a series on leadership, but I've done a series on marketing. I've done a series of how do you get above something, look into it, and work out what needs to change. And that could apply to your family, because sometimes we've got to get out of the situation. I don't mean leave your family. Listen to me, don't leave your family, but to step aside together and say, how do we need to improve things in this relationship? So before we start, let's just open with a word of prayer. We thank you, Father, that you've called us out to be your people at this time. And we pray that you'll speak to us today, touch our hearts, each of us, everyone here, including myself, Lord, what you have for us for the future. In Jesus' name, amen. In 1972, the Uruguayan rugby football team were flying with their family and officials, and their plane crashed in snow-covered mountain, and almost everyone survived. And every day for 4 weeks, they would listen to the rescue progress on their radio. And after 4 weeks, only 3 men were listening to the broadcast. I think the rest had given up. And on that day, they heard the news that the rescue had been called off. And out of the 3 people, only one said he would announce it to the group. So they called everyone together. They didn't really know what these guys were going to say. And this one guy said, "I've got good news for you." So there obviously was great anticipation. And then he said, "The rescue's been called off." Well, no one said a word for some time till someone shouted out, "How can that be good news?" And he said, "Because now we have to find our own way out of here." And the story goes that everyone who survived the crash made it out alive. You see, it was one person who made a difference. And in a school, it only takes one person. In a family, in the church, in business, in the community, it takes one person to stand out and make a difference, as long as we're doing it in the right way. So we can make a difference, each of us individually. And in Hebrews, the full chapter of Hebrews 11, we hear about all these men and women of faith. And many of them weren't that important, but they were people who did significant things and made a difference. But they're now all gone. And we've now been passed the baton. You see, in the Olympic Games, when you have a relay, they run around there and they pass the baton. Occasionally one of them gets dropped. Occasionally someone gets a sprain. They have to stop halfway through. And the problem is the baton's been passed on to us to now carry the message, to make a difference. But we trip, we stumble, we don't even take the baton. No, I don't want to be that person. But God wants us to take the baton and run the next part of the distance. And then we get to Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1, and that should come up on the screen, I hope. Somewhere there? Yes, I can see it at the back there. That's good. I now know when they go up on the screen. And it says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud or huge crowd of witnesses, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. And let us run with endurance the race that is set before us." So we are expected to run the race to the end. And we're cast off every weight. So sometimes we've got to get rid of bad attitudes. Sometimes we've got to get rid of things we're doing that are not helping our relationship, our life. Grudges, unforgiveness. We've just got to get rid of things. In business, people have got to get rid of business ideas and products that are no longer relevant today. They hang on to them because they invented them. You've got to get over it. If no one wants them, why hang on to the things? And in our life, there are things that aren't helping our relationships, and unless we get rid of them, we're not going to be able to run that race and not be tripped up. So when we look at the people in Hebrews 11, all these men and women of faith, I want to look at a few of them just now briefly and learn a few lessons about how they made a difference. The first one we want to look at is Noah. And this will be in Genesis chapter 6 through to chapter 10. And he was one person, Noah, who made a difference. He was one person that saved his family. He was one person that saved all mankind. God didn't totally destroy the world because of one man. See, Noah was about 500 to 600 years old. You see, so don't think your life is over when you get to a certain age. I'm not sure I could put up with this earth for 500 years. But he eventually lived to 950. And it was not, I guess, long after that that God had mercy on everyone and said they won't live that long any longer. Because how could we put up with that in these day and age? You know, I shared some research yesterday with the business people that out of American University that at 67 years of age, most people have got nothing new to say because they don't read, listen, and challenge themselves. And I say at 20, 30, 40, 50, most people have got nothing new to say because they don't listen, they don't read. And today we have access to so much stuff. Yes, a lot of it's rubbish, but you can actually work your way through, you know, the good things and have input, you know, in your life. And understand God's not through with you until you're dead. And I've had people tell me when I retire, I have my friend, if another friend rings me and says, how's retirement going? I'll scream. I said, the only time I get to retire is when I'm dead. Because I might have finished work, God takes me into a whole new thing. He's got a total future right through to the end of our life. You see, our life's like a book. We're only in a chapter. And because it might be, in a book there's intrigue, but there's difficulties at times or obstacles, and we stop in the chapter. Don't stop. Move to the next chapter. Because Jesus said, I've came that you might have life and have it to the full. And we need to get to that last chapter at the end of our life, because we all know what the title is. Well, you should. You know what the title is, the last chapter? We win. If you've got Jesus, you win. So that's where we're working towards at the end of our life, not when you're 60 or 50. So God's got a plan, a fulfilling plan, for us. So Noah was one of those guys that God called out when he was in his 500s. It's hard to say that, to even think of it. So don't be afraid to stand out in the crowd. When you make a difference, you're going to stand out. But we tend to want to bunker down, close the doors, let's not make waves. Well, the church has not been making waves for way too long, and we've allowed other people to actually take over, as I said earlier, our agenda. And learn to live a life of integrity, that's why God called Noah out. And in 2 Chronicles chapter 16 verse 9, it says, God is looking throughout the world and he's looking for someone he can partner with to do what he wants. So 2 Chronicles chapter 16 verse 9. So don't be afraid to stand out, as Noah did. When you're building a boat in a desert, you're going to stand out. Don't be afraid to do something for the first time. One stage, some years ago, I said to Sue, if I jump off the cliff again, can you shoot me? Because I'm always seen to be saying, well, let's go and do this without knowing what we're going to do. And even I get scared. But sometimes, in the faith zone is not always a safe zone. In fact, most of the time when you step out in faith, it's not all that safe. And I have people who don't want to start a business because they want everything to be right. I said, well, get over it, because it's not all going to be right. And you won't be able to solve any of the problems and obstacles that will come up. They will come up. But, God said to Noah after the flood, next time you see a rainbow, it'll be a reminder that I'll never flood the total earth again. So I want to give you a reminder. When you see a rainbow next time, just remember that one person can make a difference. Use that as a prompt, that one person can make a difference. So there was Noah. We come to a couple of great people, women in the Bible, who are some of my favourites. This one is Esther. And if you read the whole book of Esther, chapter 1 to 10, it makes interesting reading if you've never read it all. Here was Esther. She was young, beautiful, and her parents had died while she was young. They were in captivity in a foreign nation. And her older cousin was looking after. He trained her and brought it up. And eventually she got selected amongst other beautiful women to be in the king's court. And one day Mordecai, the cousin, heard about a plan to destroy the nation that was in captivity through one person who hated them and was jealous of them. So she died when she was young. She was adopted and she grew up in this strange country. She felt out of place. But understand, no place is out of place when you're in God's place. So where he's called you to be and to act and do things, you're never going to be out of place. I've gone to places that I really fell out of place till I realised God's put me there. Then I started to feel comfortable. Sort of comfortable. I started to get comfortable. It took a while to actually get used to it. So she was uncertain why she was selected to be in the king's court, and she became the favourite, of the actual king. So God has a place for you, whether you feel out of place or not. And when Mordecai told her about this plan, he said, maybe you were born for such a day as this. Well, I'm here to tell you that everyone here is born for such a day as this. So God is calling you out now, where you are in your family, school, university, college, work, business, whatever it is, in the community groups. He's called you out to be the person to be able to make a difference. And she still was reluctant to go to the king because you only went to the king when he summons you. When you went and you weren't called, he could have your neck slit. So it was a really friendly king. But Mordecai said, unless you do this, our whole nation will be wiped out. And you know what? At the end of the story, you know what the words were? And what a great attitude from Esther. She said, if I perish, I'm going to go and do this. If I perish, then I perish. So we need to go in this and be the person that makes a difference despite what the result is going to be. Like those pastors in India. You know, they're going, they know there's going to be probably a difficult and their life may even end. But they're going, we believe we're called to this. We're called to make a difference. There was one lady went out to a village in India, and women aren't always accepted in that country, but she went out as a pastor. And we asked the story, was she accepted? And they said no. But one day, the head chief of the village, his large bull, male bull, got sick. He called the witch doctors. He called everyone he could to pray, and the bull got worse. So in desperation, he called for this lady. She came and prayed, and the bull got better. She had everyone's attention, and her church started. And there were a lot of people coming because they actually could see the power of God at work. And we said, well, do they go out expecting miracles? All these pastors go out expecting to see God work. They don't go out thinking, well, we'll hope he works. They actually go out expecting to see God work. They go out and they make a difference. So understand, no place is out of place when you're in God's place. And maybe, well, you are called for such a day as this. The third person I'd like to look at is Rebecca. Even more favourite, probably than Esther, is Rebecca. One day when Abraham's about to die, he sends his senior servant to look for a wife for his son Isaac. On the journey, the servant says to God, the first woman that comes out at the well, and I ask for a drink, and she says, I'll give it for you and for your camels also, I'll know she's the one. So he gets to the well and Rebecca comes out and he says, will you get me a drink? Which was the custom in those days. And she said, I'll get it for you and for your camels also. Now, you may not be aware there were 10 camels, and each camel drinks about 170 to 180 litres of water each. So she just created a half day's job for herself. She didn't know she was going to be rewarded with jewellery, fine clothing, and become a leader of the nation. But her heart was to do what's required and then some. And when we serve in our families, it's not doing what's required, it's doing what's required and then some. When we serve customers, when we serve in the church, it's not doing what's required, it's doing what's required and then some. It's a bit like going the extra mile. And most people think it's about money. Well, it can be. But let me share 11 things you can give when you've got no money. So put aside your wallet and your purse and the dollar signs in your head and just listen to these 11 things. And there's probably more, but just this will do for a bit of a sharing. Number 1, give a smile. Number 2, give out good thoughts. Number 3, give a kind word. Number 4, give a cheerful disposition. Be happy. I mean, Christians can be some of the most miserable people in the world. I've had people who used to be the life of the party and they now become a Christian, they become boring. You know, we should be the most happy people on earth because we've got Jesus on our side. Number 5, give appreciation. Number 6, give encouragement. Number 7, give honour. Even if we don't agree with someone, we need to honour people. Number 8, give happiness. Number 9, give of your time. Number 10, give hope. People need hope today. I get so many business people come up to me after a breakfast and said, I really feel motivated today after this. I didn't come here in this mood because I get stuck into them and fire them up with the opportunities and encouragement. Number 11, give prayer. So there's 11 quick things. And as I said, you can probably think of a whole lot more. But, you know, a little generosity would change her life forever. She didn't even know what the reward was. She didn't even know. Her heart was to do what's required and then some. You see, you can't be generous and legalistic at the same time. You say, well, I don't want to do the journey. I don't want to be generous. I don't want to do a bit more. Well, imagine what the world would be like if Michelangelo said, I don't do ceilings. Imagine what Noah would be like if Noah said, I don't do boats. Imagine what the world would be like if Moses said, I don't do rivers. If David said, I don't do Goliaths. Imagine what the world would be like if Mary said, I don't do virgin births. Imagine what the world would be like if John the Baptist said, I don't do baptisms. Imagine what the world would be like if Peter said, I don't do Gentile discipleships. Imagine what the world would be like if Paul said, I don't do letters. And imagine what the world would be like if Jesus said, I don't do crosses. So what could the world be like if we actually were the one person that could make a difference? Let me just share about Abraham, the next one. He was 75 when God called him out. You see, age is a mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. It's just everyone else seems to worry about it. And, they keep trying to pension you off. But we can do things, in the older age that we probably couldn't do when we were younger. Hopefully we've learned a bit. Sometimes I wonder. But God called him out when he was old. And it's not what Abraham's thinking was. You see, he was settling down. He was getting comfortable. And we all like to do that. And God always ripped these people up and moved them on because they got comfortable, settled down, became disillusioned, unhappy, and did things they shouldn't do. So he ripped them up and moved them on. He said, I want you to listen, learn and grow. I want you to grow and prosper, to be a testimony to my goodness and to help people. And that's what he wants us to do. It's not about settling down. Oh, we just got enough money. I had a guy say to me, I've got enough money to put food on the table and the kids through school. I said, that's selfish. He said, why? I said, if you could generate a little bit more, if it doesn't become your God, see how many people you can help. We've got to think beyond ourselves rather than just looking after our own little table around where we are. So God called Abraham out. And in Isaiah chapter 55, verse 8, which should come up on the screen, chapter 55, verse 8 in the New King James Version, it says, God says, my thoughts are not your thoughts. See, I've got a lot of thoughts about what I can, can't do, should do, how to do things, but God's got a different idea, and I've learned that actually is a better idea than what I've got in mind. And that's what he's going to bless. What we action is what he's going to bless. And another verse in Proverbs chapter 16, verse 9, and it says, man plans his way, but God directs his path. So I've learned, I do a lot of planning, and sooner or later I realise we're going down the wrong way, or something comes across my path that changes something, and I don't really want to change, but when I do, I realise it's a better path, a better direction, a better idea. And because God wants to move and work through us in every aspect of what we do. You see, God's blessings are never earned, they're actually being obedient to what he wants us to do. So there's a bit on Abraham. Next one is Joseph in Genesis 35 and onward. Some of you will know the story. Joseph was extremely young, the youngest brother of many, and he had these dreams, and he shared it with his brothers that one day you guys are going to bow down to me. Don't think that's a lot of wisdom in how he delivered the message. And they hated him. And he shared it with his father, his parents, and they sort of wondering what's wrong with this guy. But it says his father kept it in his heart. So he knew that if God's maybe speaking through this dream, there's something here. Well, eventually his brothers got so jealous, they threw him in a pit, sold him to be a slave in Egypt. He went there, prospered. Potiphar's wife wanted to make advances, or even worse than that, with him. He kept his integrity, got thrown into prison, got forgotten. He grew with influence in the prison. Eventually, two of the king's servants got thrown in there. They had a dream. Eventually, Joseph interpreted. He said, remember me when you go out. They forgot him until one day King had a dream. So it was all in God's timing. And eventually he came out and he became the second most powerful person in the nation. And there was a big drought because God had warned him. He told the king. They got ready for it. His family in another country had to come. His brothers came and bowed down before him. See, this was the dream. See, sometimes the dream takes some time to come into fruition because God's getting us ready. When we started the business, I thought, why can't we have 100 stores the first year? Well, there's no way. The foundation wasn't in place. It might have been a great dream, but God had to get a lot of things in place before we could even grow to the first, few stores. So Joseph didn't give up on his dream, but often we give up on what God's birthing in us. And he didn't give up on that dream. And as you move forward, don't give up. Don't allow people to discourage you. Family and friends, when you share your dream, will think you're stupid. You've got a business idea, they'll think you're stupid. Careful who you share it with. There are dream stealers, there are vision takers, and they'll discourage you to pull you away from where God is even leading you. And in Genesis 37, his brothers certainly and his family did not support him in that direction. So don't give up on your dream, even if it takes a long time. Many years ago, there was the old series, The A-Team, on television. A few nods, you're as old as me. But if you get Foxtel, they're probably repeating it 4 million times by now anyway. I love it at the end of the program. The whole plan is a disaster. But in the end, it all comes good, and Hannibal says, I love it when a plan comes together. And it's a bit like our lives. It might take a lot of twists and turns, but in the end, if God's in it, the plan will come together. So, God is always with you. If he births it, he's never going to desert you. When we started the business, we went through some disasters. I was ready to give up, and Sue said, you don't understand. That's why you need a good wife. You don't understand what God's birth is going to make happen. It may not take the twists and turns that we would like. It may go a different direction, but he's there. So what I've learned is, while you're waiting for it to become a reality, develop yourself. Talk to people, listen to people, ask questions, read, listen, and move forward under that situation. You see, God wasn't at work producing the circumstances that Joseph wanted. He was at work in bad circumstances producing the Joseph he wanted. Moses, in Exodus, all of Exodus and Deuteronomy. Moses gets a lot of verses because he does a lot of things, good and bad. So he gets a lot of... And God calls him and he says, who's me? Who me? And I've got to tell you, I've asked that question a few times in my life. Why me? There's a whole lot of people that I would see better than me. But you see, God doesn't look on the outward appearance, he looks on the heart. And he can work with us when it's like that. But Moses was fearful and reluctant because he'd killed some Egyptians and he fled into the desert. And, life in the faith zone is not a safe zone. But Moses felt safe out in the desert. He became comfortable and relaxed and built some wealth out there. I don't know how you can be comfortable in a desert, but he did. You see, we become comfortable in terrible situations because we actually don't want to go out and do what God's called us to do. So we justify being comfortable, where we are. But eventually he obeyed and he led 2 million screaming people through the desert for 40 years. I guess that's what his reward was. But he saw a lot of miracles in that time. So he eventually overcame the experiences of the past. You may have a terrible past. God's not interested. He's dealt with that at the cross. He wants you to seek forgiveness, move forward, because he's got the plan, the future. It's all out there. So Moses overcame the comforts of his present situation, and growth begins when we move out of our safe zone. We start to make a difference when we move out of our safe zone. Are you prepared to step out of your safe zone? And in the end, Moses was 120 years old and he died. And you know what it said about him? It said his eye was not dim, nor his natural vigour diminished. So he was still firing on all cylinders at 120. Actually, it's interesting at the end of Job's life, after he lost everything and got it back many times over, right at the end of the book it says Job had died at 140. I'm not sure I can put up with this world that long. 140. And it said he was full of years. So he was still firing at 140. So what are we doing trying to settle back and close the doors and lock the doors and keep ourselves safe? The last one I want to talk about is David. He was David, a skinny, small boy looking after sheep in the desert. But God was preparing him for a bigger future. He was being prepared in the downtime. And with David, he would have to kill bears and lions with his slingshot. So he became very, very accurate with a slingshot. I've tried using slingshots. All I seem to do is break other things than what I'm aiming at. So I gave up a long time ago. I thought I'd teach my kids, and then I think Sue, a lot of nods there. I thought, probably not a good idea. We'd already put cricket balls through the windows, so... But his family tried to keep him down out there in the desert. And when God wanted to anoint a new king to replace Saul, he said, it's in the family of Jesse. So Samuel went to anoint the next king. So he said to Jesse, bring all your sons in. So the first one comes, and he's big, he's got the muscles, the six-pack, everything. And Samuel says, that's him. And God says, it's not. I don't look on the outward appearance. I look on the heart, God said to him. So they brought every son, and Samuel instantly said, there's none of them here. You must have another son. No, we don't, says Jesse. How's that? David wasn't even thought of as part of the family because he's out in the desert all the time. And then eventually he says, oh, yeah, we got this sort of small boy out there. Bring him. We're not going to sit to eat till he comes. And he comes, and Samuel said, he's the one. That must have fallen, everyone must have fallen over in shock. And eventually David was the one God used to kill the giant. And even Goliath said, who are you to come out against me, you small, thin, you got nothing with a slingshot. And yet all David needed was God, and gave him the accuracy to kill the giant in front of him. He didn't need the strength of his older brother because God was with him, calling him out, but neither his father or his brothers would recognise him at all. Don't let others limit you because what might be perceived as a weakness or lack of knowledge. When I started work in an advertising agency at 14, I didn't even know it was an advertising agency. You'd never think some years later I'd run it as a managing director with 200 people and all these big clients. I never told anyone. I doubt they would ever forgive me. There was no university degree. There was no anything. But God had called me to do something. I never expected to run an agency. I didn't even know it was one. But God had a plan. And I was just happy to do a job and get some money. But we're not here to get by and pay bills. We're here to succeed and be successful, to be a blessing to other people.